This is not an era of war. One of the most defining sentences ever spoken by any world leader since the Ukraine war started. These words were said by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his meeting with Russian President on the margins of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization or the SCO summit in Uzbekistan in September last year. Taking a cue from Prime Minister Modi's statement subsequently, all communication by India kept focusing on these three Ds: democracy, dialogue, and diplomacy. Interestingly, even before the war started, in March 2014, after the annexation of Crimea by Russia, India issued a statement expressing its deep concern and called for a peaceful resolution of the crisis through dialogue and diplomacy. The statement emphasized the need for respecting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. But there is another truth to India's response. Despite these words, India has failed to hold Russia accountable for its actions. India is choosing to balance its strategic interests and relations with the parties involved in the conflict with global perception. Russia's war on Ukraine is about to complete a year, and in this 1 year, almost all significant nations have chosen sides in this war. But India, despite pressures from US and European Union, has taken a cautious and diplomatic approach towards the ongoing conflict. As a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, India has expressed concern over the escalation of violence in the region and called for a peaceful resolution through dialogue. India has emphasized the need for respect for territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and has supported a negotiated settlement between the conflicting parties. India has also stressed the importance of compliance with international law and the UN Charter and has called for an immediate end to the hostility and violence. Article 2 of the UN Charter outlines the principle that member states must abide by to maintain peace. It says that all members shall refrain from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. All members shall settle their international disputes by peaceful means. This clearly means that war is unacceptable. But India has maintained a neutral stance in the conflict and has refrained from taking any sides. India has also been mindful of its interests and relationships with both Russia and Ukraine and has sought to balance its relation with both the countries. During the parliamentary debate on Ukraine, S. Jaishankar reiterated India's stance on the importance of international law, the UN Charter, and respect for the territorial integrity. While the statement was a coded critique of Russian actions, it primarily focused on the humanitarian crisis rather than condemning Russian aggression. It has abstained from successive votes in the UN Security Council, General Assembly, and Human Rights Council that condemned Russian aggression in Ukraine and thus far has refused to openly call out Russia as the instigator of the crisis. India's reluctance to publicly condemn Russia stems from its calculations about how such condemnation might alienate Moscow and undermine India's security. India is well aware of Russia's importance as a partner, particularly in light of our relations with China and Pakistan. New Delhi sees both of these states as immediate and sustained threats, and it believes that preserving its friendship with Moscow will help to prevent deepening of Russian ties with China and to limit Russian temptations to build strategic ties with Pakistan. Both China and Pakistan desire closer ties with Russia, deeper than what India feels comfortable with. New Delhi aims to minimize Moscow's proximity to these rivals. India's historic ties with Russia, including its support for India in past crises, reinforce India's reluctance to criticize Moscow. Also, don't forget Russia's veto-wielding power in the UN Security Council. We are always in need of friends in such high places. Despite Russia's blatant disregard for the international opinion and even laws, India sees Russia as a dependable partner and thus sets a very high threshold for public criticism. Although PM Modi has repeatedly appealed to Putin and Zelensky to come to their negotiating table, India's efforts haven't borne fruits. 1 year later, Zelensky has dug his heels and fashioned himself into a hero of sorts amongst the West, while Putin has turned his military operation into a divine war to ensure sustained support domestically. The war still remains far from ending. Do tell us what you think about this video in the comment section, and for more news updates, subscribe to India Today.